Good morning, boys. In your last class, I had taught you how the imp fails in his attempt to make the man commit sin. Now we are going to see how this imp is successful in tricking this man and making him commit sin. How he changes this good natured man into um, abusive, selfish, rude, self centered person. The devil had warned him that if he does not redeem his fault in 3 years, then he will have him dunked in holy water. The imp was frightened. He scampered back to the earth, thinking how he would redeem his fault. He thought and thought, and at last hit upon a good plan. He turned himself into a laboring man and went and took service with the poor peasant. So he turned himself into a laboring man to give advice to the peasant how to sow. The first year he advised the peasant to sow corn on the marshy place. The peasant took his advice and sowed in the marsh. The year turned out to be a very dry one, and the crops of the other peasants were all scorched by the sun, but the poor man's corn grew thick and tall and full-eared. So that year, when he advised him to sow in a boggy, marshy area, the year was dry, and so the crops of the other farmers failed, but his turned out to be very successful and was full eared. It had lot of grains. All his uh, ear was filled with grains. Not only had he grain enough to last him for the whole year, but he had much left besides. The next year, the imp advised the peasant to sow on the hill, and it turned out a wet summer. Other people's corns were beaten down and rotted, and the ears did not fill, but the peasant's crop up on the hill was a fine one. He had more grain left over than before, so that he did not know what to do with it at all. The next year he asked him to sow on the hill. That year it rained and rained. The other peasants' crops rotted, and his was a fine one. Now he had excess grain. Then the imp showed the peasant how he would mash the grain and distill spirit from it. So he showed him how to mash the grain, ferment it, and to make spirit or drinks out of it. And the peasant made strong drink and began to drink it himself and to give it to his friends. So the imp went to the devil, his master, and boasted that he had made up for his failure. The devil said that he would come and see for himself how the case stood. So now he boasted, the man made drink, the peasant made drink. He offered the drink to his friends. Remember, he is no more a poor peasant, so he has rich friends, and he has invited them to his house, and now they're having a party. He came to the peasant's house and saw that the peasant had invited his well-to-do neighbors and was treating them to drink. His wife was offering the drink to the guest, and as she handed it around, she stumbled against the table and spilled a glassful. So this wife, probably she might have had a few drinks herself, and so she stumbled and she dropped a glass of drink. The peasant was angry and scolded his wife. What do you mean? Do you think it's ditch water, you cripple? So see how disrespectful he is to his wife now. This good man calls her a disabled person, a cripple. And you must go pouring good stuff like that over the floor. He calls the drink a good stuff. The imp nudged the devil, his master, with his elbow. See, said he, that's the man who did not grudge his only crust. Now you see, that's the man who did not grudge his crust. Suppose you stole something from him now, what would be his reaction? The peasant, still railing at his wife, began to carry the drink round himself. Just then, a poor peasant, returning from work, came in uninvited. He greeted the company, sat down, and saw that they were drinking. Tired with the day's work, he felt that he too would like a drop. He sat and sat. His mouth kept watering. But the host, instead of offering him any, only muttered, I can't find drink for everyone who comes along. So you see the changes in this man. This man comes tired and he knows that they're all having a party. So probably he could also get a glass of drink, but instead the peasant is so rude to him. He says, well, I can't offer drinks to anyone who comes along. And of course he tells his wife, do you think this is ditch water? Do you think this is dirty water that you're spilling around? So he is so rude now. This pleased the devil, and the imp chuckled. The imp is giggling, and he said, wait a bit, there's more to come. This is just the tip of the iceberg. You see what else would happen. The rich peasants drank, and their host drank too, and they began to make false, oily speeches to one another. The devil listened and praised the imp. If he said, the drink makes them so foxy that they begin to cheat each other, they will soon be in our hands. Oh, see how they are cheating each other. They are telling lies about each other. They are making oily speeches. Now they're going to be under our control very soon. Wait for what's coming, said the imp. Let them have another glass all around. Now they are like foxes, wagging their tails and trying to get around one another. But presently you will see them like savage wolves. Oh, now they're only trying to get around. They're trying to please each other. And they're telling lies. But you see what's going to happen? Soon they will be uncontrolled. They will be savage like the wolves. The peasant had another glass each, and the talk became wilder and rougher. Instead of oily speeches, they began to abuse and snarl at one another. Soon they took to fighting and punched one another's noses, and the host joined in the fight, and he too got well beaten. Now they have become more louder, and they're wrangling curses at each other. They are boxing each other, so they have become more wilder, like wolves. The devil looked on and was much pleased at all this. This is first rate, he said. This is excellent. But the imp replied, wait a bit. The best is yet to come. This is not the best. Don't say this is excellent. Wait and see. Wait till they have had a third glass. Now they are raging like wolves. But let them have one more glass and they will be like swine. The peasants had their third glass and became quite like brutes. They were uncontrollable. They muttered and shouted, not knowing why, and not listening to one another. So you see the change that has come about. First, they were giving oily speeches. Then they became rough and wild and loud and aggressive. And now they are unable to understand each other. Then the party began to break up. Some went alone, some went in twos, some went in threes, all staggering down the street. They cannot move properly. They are unsteady. The unsteady movement is due to the excess drink that they've had. The host went to speed his guest, but he fell on the nose into a puddle, smeared himself from top to toe, and lay there grunting like a pig. So he was covered in dirt and mud, and he was lying like a pig in the puddle. This pleased the devil still more. Well, said he, you have hit on the first-rate drink and have quite made up for the blunder about the bread. But now tell me how this drink was made. You must have put in fox's blood. That was what made the peasants sly as foxes. Then I suppose you added wolf's blood. That is what made them fierce like wolves. And you must have finished it off with swine's blood to make them behave like swine. I know what you must have done. You must have spiked their drink with the blood of animals. You see, first they were sly like foxes, and then they became vicious like wolf, and now they are filthy like pigs. So you might have added or spiked their drinks with the blood of animals. And the imp said, no, said the imp, that was not the way I did it. All I did was to see that the peasant had more corn than he needed. All I did was to give him extra corn. The blood of the beast is always in man, but as long as he has enough corn for his needs, it is kept in bounds. While that was the case, the peasant did not grudge his last crust. But when he had corn left over, he looked for ways of getting pleasure out of it, and I showed him a pleasure drinking. So he says that the blood of beast is always in man. The basic instinct of man is that of an animal. But here, the writer Leo Tolstoy, I think his beast is more sinister. Is something that is depicted in the Bible, the beast or the devil. And the characteristics of devil is very different from that of God. It is rude, deception, lies, chaos, anarchy. All these characteristics are associated with the devil. And so he says that these qualities are there in a man, but he has them under control. We all have something, we want to tell lies sometimes, we want to do wrong, but then we keep it under control. And the imp says this happens when the man has just enough for his needs. So, whatever we need, if we have that, our feelings are under control. But when we have more than what we want, then what do? We turn it into something to get pleasure. And that is what makes us more destructive, makes us more beastly. And that is what he had done. He had just taught him to get a pleasure, that is drinking. So there are so many ways of getting pleasure. Drinking is just one of the ways of getting pleasure. And when he began to turn God's good gifts into spirits for his own pleasure, the foxes, wolves, and swine's blood in him all came out. If only he goes on drinking, he will always be a beast. So, as long as this man had what he needed, he was under control. All these feelings were under control. But what happens when he had enough drink? All these things which were pent up inside, which he controlled, went out of control and all came out, causing chaos. And that is what happens when people drink. They hurt people, not knowing why they are hurting others. The devil praised the imp, forgave him for his blunder, and advanced him to the post of high honor. So the devil was so pleased with the imp at being so successful that he gave him a distinction. He gave him a post, a higher post. This story teaches us also that, we talk about pleasure. Drinking is, as I told you, is just one way of getting pleasure. There are so many other ways also, okay, in which we try to please ourselves. And the more people have, the more greedy they become. Now, I want you to ponder on this question, on these questions rather. How we as humans have misused the excess gift that nature has blessed us with. Secondly, as students, have your parents given you more than you deserve or more than you need? And if so, are you misusing these gifts? With this thought, I take your leave today. Thank you.